Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is April 14th, 2025, and we're joined by John Ancona, Senior Producer at PXP Studios. John worked as a creative producer and agency operations manager for a decade with Publicis Group, leading such disciplines as resource management, studio design, and brand production. John worked on healthcare accounts such as Pfizer, BMS, Abbott, and Gilead, and now as a senior producer with PXP Studios and Harbor Picture Company, he develops and produces mold-breaking motion media campaigns from rare disease medical education to high-concept broadcast ads. He also takes a special interest in virtual production, extended reality, real patient healthcare marketing, and in-house production services. Welcome, John.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm well, yeah. It's sunny in New York City, finally.
Oh, thank God. I know we talked about this a second ago, but I feel like it is. I feel like it is okay to be repetitive. The weather has been so terrible, and it has been so nice to see blue sky and sunshine today.
Yeah, we have to celebrate it when we can.
We definitely do. I actually walked outside twice today, which I don't think I remember walking outside during the day, unless I had an appointment or something in the last few months, because it's
definitely been like that.
My California blood does not like it, and I'm very appreciative. Of course, though, I'm going to California tomorrow, so hopefully when I get back, it'll be a little bit more consistently sunny here. So
yeah, bring some sunshine back, and let's keep it consistent through the spring.
I absolutely will. We're so ready here. It's unbelievable. Well, thank you for being on the show. I'm excited to welcome you. I like to start each show kind of, getting our listeners getting them to know you a little bit. And I think a good way to do that is just, giving us a bit of a brief intro to your background. I always like to kind of pull on some of your experiences that might be a bit unique, because I find that not every art producer knew about art production when we came into this career. And it's always kind of interesting to kind of learn the path that took you here. So do you want to share a little bit about your background with us?
Yeah, and I'm so excited to be here. It's been a lot of fun listening to your episodes in preparation. So I'm a new listener, a new fan, and as well as a guest. So
that's great.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah. What's unique, I think, about my path to becoming an art producer is probably the way I wound through different disciplines in the agency world. So I started, 10 years ago in the resource management team, a really small team and a small discipline that was just getting up and running at Publicis in terms of a service that they could provide internally to allocate creatives to the right jobs, understand the skill sets within the agency, and also augment those skill sets with freelancers and vendors and independent contractors. So that discipline was just starting to gain momentum when I joined as a resource management coordinator. And then I continued on that thread for a while at different agencies within the Publicis Health network. And one of the agencies I joined, Heartbeat, at the time Heartbeat Ideas, was a very small agency, under 100 employees on staff. And they were about to undergo a tremendous period of growth, and resource management was crucial to that. Again, balancing staff with external resources. And so working with them over probably about 5 years to grow their agency up to about 200 gave me a lot of opportunity to see both what that growth looks like and how to manage staff and pull in and hire the right disciplines to meet the expectations of the clients. So that was my entryway into agency world and the creative world. And I was hiring producers and I was hiring animators, and I was keeping in touch with different creatives that were looking for gig jobs or, again, freelancing or independent contractors, and maybe converting them to staff or just keeping in touch with them as projects come up and hiring them for short-term stints. And then out of that, we started to see a lot more motion projects come in, not just digital and print projects. And so, like I said, I was hiring video producers, and then eventually I was growing my own team of video producers. And at the same time, we were also building a content studio, design studio in-house. and I was working to kind of lead that. So it's a little bit of right place at the right time, which I think a lot of people will probably feel similar to their stories. And then, yeah, out of that, I took on a director of operations role, which was really cool. I like to think of that role as specifically creative operations, how the creative team works and functions. And yeah, now settling into more of a direct producer role.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm sure you pull from so much of what you learned earlier in your career to help enhance the productions. And I can speak firsthand, having just worked on one with you and everybody around you saying, he knows what he's doing. He's a good one. He's a good one.
That's good to hear. Yeah. I've had such a great experience working with that team. And I feel like every experience, whether you know who you're working with or, you have some past experiences. And we had worked once with Corey and Neil Kramer Johnson long time ago for something that never went live, unfortunately.
Oh my gosh. Is that when you were at Heartbeat?
Yes, that was at Heartbeat. Yeah. They had done such a cool monochromatic photo shoot. And it was like we were mourning that forever, that project. And then it was such a great opportunity to work with them again this time.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I forgot about that. I probably blocked it out, but yes, we felt the same way about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize we had crossed paths back then. Well, it's nice to hear you again.
Yeah.
So tell me what you're known for on your team.
It's an interesting question. I think any producer brings a lot of skills to the table. I think that makes, you'll be really successful in the role if you have a lot of skills to bring. But I think maybe one of the most consistent things I bring to the table or people have given me positive feedback on is the ability to bring people together and find out where, almost like a catalyst or an enzyme, like how the pieces fit together and what makes one person and their skill set and their interests and their vision compatible with another person's or a group or a partner. I think that's one of my main skills that I like to use and get to know people and understand how they communicate and how it's going to be received by another person and make sure everybody's speaking the same language in a way.
Yeah, I talk a lot about that in my role as this idea of being a translator. And it's just such an easy way to think about what I do because not everybody speaks the same language. My artists come to me and say something in one way, and I turn around and filter it and say it, somewhere way different to you guys. And the same way, you'll tell me something and, sometimes I'll just forward along, or sometimes I need to kind of massage it and be like, no, I think this is what they're meaning and this is what we need to go after. And, and it's just so important, I think, to be able to wear all these different hats and be able to translate language because it really is a job that relies on communication and, getting the best out of people.
Entirely. Yeah. I think translating is like a great way to describe it because there's such beauty in translation too. If you just think about like reading a translated text, like there's interpretation there and you can really like find something out in the act of translating. And especially for us in terms of creative collaboration, like, as you said, communication is key and you can't always just see the thing in two people's mind's eye right there. You have to put it on paper. You have to say it. You have to describe it. And that gets us to better products.
Yeah, I talk a lot about the idea of like when I was a waitress and how similar that was to, the idea of translation. You had to translate the front of the house needs to the back of the house, to the chef, to the, the guests and to the bartender and to the bus. Like everybody kind of had to work together, but it was kind of up to the waiter or waitress to kind of, be the glue that held it all together and make sure everybody got what they needed to like provide a really successful experience for the guests.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like a lot of what my understanding of your current role is. In a lot of ways, you have to understand your client, your customer, what what you can provide, what's on the menu, almost.
Exactly. Okay, so what do you think would be helpful for artists and their agents and reps to understand better about your job?
That's a great question. It definitely changes project to project, but something that I see a lot is maybe a tendency to rely on past experiences a little bit more than taking the agency or even the clients along with the photographer, the director, like along on that journey a bit more, almost to like an overly detailed level. So I think in my experience, I work with a lot of creatives all coming in at different levels, a lot of producers all coming in at different levels of experience, and boiling something down to its essential parts benefits the job every time, even if you have everybody on that call or everybody in that room nodding because what was just said was already known. Saying it and breaking it down to its component parts, or really like just bringing everything down to a base level of understanding, can really, really help. So I see that in all facets of production, but I think one of the main things I see where that's really essential is when you're talking about crew roles and when you're talking about putting a production together to even the most, again, component parts like lighting. Like, I don't know that our clients often have a deep understanding, and they don't need to, of how you light something to get the result. So a lot of times I appreciate and I find the most success with photographers and DPs and directors that take a step back and they don't just say, oh, we're going to light it this way. Next, let's move on to something else. They really go into detail, and I find that really helpful. So but a deeper level of detail is always appreciated.
I have not heard that answer before, and I absolutely love it. And it makes me think about, what you first said, which is the idea of like, at least what I took from it, excuse me, is the idea that like, don't just answer the question what you're used to answering. Don't rely only on what you've always done. Like, take a minute to think about your situation, your surroundings, the people who are involved. And like, the word I'm using a lot this year is curiosity. So kind of be curious about what's happening. And I think, for a lot of people in this industry, they've been around for a long time. And I'm not saying they're old, or I'm just saying the world is moving so fast that even if you were in this industry, 10 or 15 years ago, it was a lifetime ago in terms of what's been happening. And I think sometimes artists tend to rely on the way that it's always been and I don't want to say think that they know better, because that's not the case. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. It's more that they just rely on that. It's the answer they've always given. It's what's felt safe. Mm-hmm. And we're in a time where it's just really important to be curious and ask questions and explain yourself in a way that allow people who maybe don't know what they don't know to kind of catch up a little bit and be able to participate and collaborate.
I think so. Yeah, it really does allow everybody in a conversation to contribute. And I think you'll get a sense on any project of where everybody's coming in at in those first couple days or couple weeks or first couple tasks. So it's not something that needs to happen at every stage of a project. We don't need to go into such intricate detail every time we meet, but at least starting that way, I think is really helpful, especially for where a production partner like leaves off and we pick up as an agency or as an internal production team back to our clients. Like, we have to connect those dots, whether you're in the room or not. So give us those pieces to do that on your behalf is helpful. Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, not everybody, you don't want everybody's opinion all the time.
Oh, never.
But it is, I think the idea of just pausing for a second and your go-to answers don't always need to be the answer moving forward. Just take a second and think about everything, I think is smart. Okay, so I told you my word, which is curiosity. And I'm really, really trying to channel that a lot in my personal world, in my professional world this year. And I think about our industry and how it's just changing at this like breakneck speed. What would you say a good word for 2025 has been so far?
So far for 2025, perseverance comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
A lot of time, actually, I think that's a word, in the middle of a project when you're maybe gearing up for shooting or you're just coming off of the high of shooting, like perseverance is a big one for me. I think so far, really like since last year, the ad agency or the ad industry the world that I exist in, which is specific to healthcare brands, we have to push through a lot of adversity, a lot of unknowns. And we don't love unknowns in the ad world, or especially in the healthcare and wellness space. We don't like those unknowns there. We would try to get rid of as many unknowns as possible. So with everything with this new administration, boiling down to, a bunch of unknowns that I don't think we faced before, whether, again, that could be new technology like AI, could be new ways of working in production, like virtual production. We all have to come together to execute our craft and use our tools to the best of our abilities and get through those obstacles, whatever they are.
Talk to me a little bit about what's happening with AI at your agency. Are you asked to create with it, and what kind of conversations are happening?
Yeah, I think it's being used and sought after most often right now in our conceptual phases for ideation and trying to visualize something that someone would have to sketch otherwise.
Yeah.
And trying to pull an image or images together that communicate an idea. And we can go so much further than we have before with AI image generation. And I think that helps all the way back or at the start of something like new business opportunities through storyboarding, even through post, because you really can, on an individual level, any member of the creative team that I'm working with can go into these tools and describe something and get something back and start refining it in a way. And then it speaks for them, or they can use it as a tool to speak on a subject, on a topic, on a component of a project that we're creating. And they don't just have to rely on written communication of their words. So it's being used most often right now to sell in ideas. Like, what is this going to look like? What's that ad lob? What does that webpage look like? What's that hero image? And then if it goes forward and we refine it, it starts to be our North Star in a lot of ways, in terms of recreating that image, in terms of adapting that image, whatever it is. And I think it's been very helpful.
So we all know how literal clients are sometimes, and you show them something and then they get kind of hooked on that. And we also know the beginning part of the ideation is just the start of the collaboration process, right? So you're going to be talking to artists and clients and creatives, and it's going to get, massaged and, more input. Do you find that with AI, the clients are, because you can generate such a clearer vision for what you're looking for, the clients are expecting more, for it to be more like what you show them right away? Or is there still room for interpretation?
I think there's definitely still room for interpretation. And right, yeah, what you're mentioning is it opens up this door of, again, trying to match something you kind of already have, or like you've already been able to do it. Why go shoot it now? Is a question that has definitely come up. And we've answered that in a lot of different ways. I think what comes to mind recently is discussing craft and how important craft is. And I don't know that we as a creative community have really answered, like, what is the craft that goes into generating imagery with AI? Is there craft? You're prompting these image generators, but when does the magic happen? When you get your final result, or the 100 iterations that you're working through? But we know what craft goes into a photo shoot or a video shoot. We know all of the roles that individuals play to kind of bring that vision together. So right now, we're pairing those things together by saying, like, here's a version of what we can create, and you can almost see proof of concept. You can see proof of concept. You can see something that, if somebody looked at it blankly, would say, oh, that's a final campaign right there. But the joy and the energy and the craft and, what makes it really special and actually breathes life into it is actually doing it together. So I think it allowed us, again, to have this North Star. And then, the challenge is, I think it's been the challenge for advertisers for a really long time, is get your client to walk with you on that journey. I always think about that adage, like you create the thing 3 times, you write it, you shoot it, and then you edit it. And you have to kind of take your client's hand at every piece of that and say, it's not final yet, or it's not final yet. And then, oh, okay, now you can review this thing as final. AI helps us go, remember, this is what we're trying to get to. So something you see raw out of a camera, we're still trying to get to that concept, that ad lob. And having that, I think, gives clients and agency a lot of faith. Like, let's keep going. We can do this. This is achievable. Look, we did it in this image generator. Like, let's do it together. Let's figure out those ways of making it real.
And I do think, not to lump all clients together and say they all are like this, because it's just a difference of your experiences, right? Like in a creative agency, our experience have been, a career's worth of understanding the creative process. And clients don't always have that same path that we have all had. So it's hard to envision, but I think AI gives them that thing to look at and see and understand, as opposed to a concept or an idea that they have to imagine on their own.
Yeah. Have you been using it similarly, or your artists?
Yeah, our artists thank you for asking, have been using it a little bit in the creation of their treatments. I think it's hard though, because there's the whole usage, legality issue of the whole thing. And, recognizing that, we're out there using imagery that has been out there in the world. And for an artist to be outraged about AI, but then to use AI, it's an interesting conversation, but it is a tool. It's a power tool that does help, especially photographers, I think, because think about the treatments that we create. And oftentimes we are required to only use our own imagery, right? We can't pull from, it's kind of looked at poorly upon if you pull from other artists' imagery, even if you're crediting them, right? But with a director's treatment, they're pulling from movies and TV shows, and other things that they're inspired by, and it's kind of commonplace. So, photographers, I think, are enjoying the ability to create something that they may not currently have in their portfolio to be able to describe their their vision for the job.
Yeah, and I think that the trepidation you're describing about, the legality of it, I think a lot of people, you can't use AI right now, I think, without like a little dose of fear, a little dose of uncertainty about what am I putting in this, boiling pot of a bunch of creative ideas. Is it going to come out and be my idea? I think I've seen that as a topic among people too. Like, doesn't everybody kind of get the same thing out of it? Or, what makes it unique, and who owns it? Like, who owns the idea in terms of the legality, but also like the feeling of ownership. Can you feel like you own that image that's been generated with these tools?
And I do think, like, taking the uses conversation, pushing that aside for just a second in terms of, who's created it. I can't really answer that, but I can say that, AI, it's not just going in, typing in a prompt and hitting return.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. It's not a one-for-one replacement. There are a lot of people that are utilizing the multiple tools that are needed in order to create to bring a concept to life. And AI is just one of those tools. And my husband has an AI-based ad agency, and he says all the time that it's, they are power tools for his creatives. And it's important to think about it that way. I think it's a really powerful tool. And if you don't like it or agree with it or want it in the industry, you still have to understand it, because you have to be able to speak why it doesn't work in your particular project, or why you're not, using it. Or if you like it and you think it enhances what you're doing, you have to understand it, because the people around you understand it and they're using it, and you need to be able to, speak to why the tool you're using is going to enhance the project.
Yeah. And in that way, I see it as similar to justifying a ton of other creative decisions.
Yeah.
when it comes to partnership on the vendor side or with the brands you're working on, I think you are often not challenged, but you need a purpose, you need a reason to use any of the tools in your tool set. And now that AI is one of them, I don't know that it should necessarily be treated any differently. I think it should just be another thing that we can use, and we have to understand it as we develop the ways that it makes our projects better, the way that it challenges us to make our projects better. It's exciting to me, honestly, and I look forward to seeing what it becomes, especially in the healthcare space. I haven't really seen that come to fruition yet, let's say.
Yeah. Well, let's move on a little bit, because I'm also really interested to hear about how artists are connecting with you, and even reps. Like, how are you, you mentioned that you're in the office today. Do people come visit you in the office? Do you have portfolio shows? Is it all email or virtual, online? Like, how do you get updated on what's the latest and newest out there?
Yeah, I'm happy to report that in-person meetings are alive and well, at least in my bubble. And I'm definitely, I love a meeting. I love a quick meeting. I love a long meeting. I love a meeting with a presentation. I love just what have you been up to? And I think maybe that's the key for me in establishing and keeping these relationships is like, keep it rolling. Like, don't let the conversation die. And that's, everyone's responsibility as part of the parties interacting. One of the things that has happened a lot, I think, since COVID is sending over portfolios or sending over presentations over email. And I think that still does the trick, but there's nothing like an in-person meeting, and not just a transactional meeting to say, here's some work from my photographer, or I brought cupcakes, which we all love cupcakes, but get to know the people you're in the room with, let the conversation go wherever it needs to go. Maybe you don't get through that full presentation.
Yeah.
Right. And make it like a real experience, because that differentiates it from let's get on Zoom together, or I'm going to send you again a link to a portfolio. You can't exactly control or have an interaction the way you can when you're in a room with somebody.
And what are they bringing in to show you? Do they have individual portfolios? Is it an iPad? Or are they just bringing in little special projects here or there?
iPad, usually, a presentation. It's been a while since somebody's handed me a portfolio. I was trying to think of the last time that I got that, but maybe, like in the past year, I think I've got one, nice prints sent to the office for us to look at. And that can be really exciting too. I think a lot of times we also come back from trade shows and conferences with physical material that gets everybody excited. Look what this printer can do, and look at the, how nice these images have come out on paper. And, you can lay that out in an office and let people look at it. And a lot of producers here do that if we get the chance to have physical materials. It's like, oh, there's a little table out of this vendor material, they dropped it off. And that's also really exciting. So anything tactile, anything physical, I think makes a difference.
Yeah, I think so too. We have a group portfolio. Our artists individually haven't created their own portfolios in quite a while. It just was not necessary, and it cost so much money. It just seemed, wasteful. So I think having a group portfolio kind of is nice, because people are like, oh my God, there's like a print I can look at, but the opportunity to actually present the portfolio, there's not a ton of, that's happening more and more for sure, but it's more like you said, like providing experiences, like we're throwing parties and taking people out for lunch or stopping by an office with cupcakes just to say hi, and catch up and show, a project or two or something. And it's always been about the relationship, but I feel like lately it's been even more so about that, and I like that.
I think it makes it special. Yeah.
It does make it special for sure. So when you're looking for talent for a job or a project, what do you do? What's the first thing you do?
Big Instagram person. I really am. And I think I'm sure it's been a trend for past decade, but maybe not that long. I like what's going on Instagram right now, where creative content is being posted and everyone's being tagged that worked on the job. And if you don't have an Instagram, that's fine. your name, you'll get a full credits list in the captions. I love that. I love browsing, and I'm a big fan of music videos. I love music videos as an art form. So I love looking at a music video and going into the caption and looking at the full team list and clicking on every link,
That's great. It's like the tip
yeah,
of the video.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a Wikipedia hole that you can go into. You start on one article and you link to another one, and there's another one, and then 5 hours has passed, but you've learned all about the sinking of the Titanic or something.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question though. If you're on Instagram and you need to search for an artist, there might be, a bunch of artists out there that don't even show up in your feed, right? Like, so are you searching for specific artists? Are you searching for keywords? Are you just looking at who's coming up and then going down those individual rabbit holes and continuing to follow people?
Pretty much all of it. I think maybe that's my more like passive approach to just always trying to bookmark and flag. And I actually do use that bookmark feature a lot. So I have a folder in the app that I'm constantly bookmarking things to, and I'll just kind of scroll through that to remind myself what I've seen before and what that work is and what I liked about that work, and pair it with the job I'm actively looking for, or kind of again go down that rabbit hole of like, who created this? Okay, but not just the name brand, the production company, but who was the director?
Yeah.
Who were the other producers? Who was the agency? And try to go down the rabbit hole there. And then I think like a lot of people have just got an old-fashioned Excel grid that just kind of always stays on my desktop that I go to, and that's got essential information. Who did I reach out to and who did I speak to and who's that right point of contact, rather than just filling out a contact list, contact sheet. So a little bit of both. Yeah, if I'm actively looking for a job, another thing that I like to do is I really do appreciate looking at nominations for awards. Winning is great. I'll look at the winners too, but I'm looking at the nominees, and these awards bodies put in so much work into reviewing submissions and almost curating these different categories for accolades, that's also really helpful for me to go look at just what's being recognized or who's submitting work and go through there and see if there's, oftentimes it's like I'm connecting dots. I'll go to one awards body and look up a company, and I'll go to look them up on Instagram, and it's like, oh, I follow them already. And that's kind of a good sign in my book.
I'm always impressed when an art producer reminds me, not because I fully know that you all do this, but I think a lot of artists sometimes forget that this is your job. You need to know what's out there. You're not just pushing, forwarding links around, right? You have to really have a deep understanding of what's out there. And it used to be, people would have source books, and, there were just a few places. You just had a few tools in your toolbox where you would pull from to find people. And now it's vast, the places that you can find artists. And you're not just expected to know, all the regular players. You're looking for unique and different approaches and people who are inspiring. And I love to hear what you put into searching. And I think that's really great.
I definitely find a lot of joy in it as far as responsibilities of my role goes. Like, that's one of the more joyous ones, is seeing what's out there. And I love also seeing people, as I'm sure everybody does, who are really invested in their own work. So I think something that also differentiates content for me is self-celebration of like, this great project, this great image, this great short form video, whether it was a personal project or, a paid project, whatever it is. When people are excited about their work, I'm excited about their work.
And let's talk a little bit about, because you just said excited about your work, and it's the next question on our list, but it made me think about the creative call also. Do you find that when artists are on a creative call, do you get a sense that they're excited about their work, or is there not really a chance for that on the creative call? That needs to come out more in the treatment?
Yeah, the way you're phrasing it, it's making me think about my experiences, and I feel for artists on the other side of that call because you're trying to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Trying to do 100 things on that call, probably. You're trying to advocate for yourself and also introduce yourself, probably, and get on a somewhat personal level with people, but get on a project level with people. And especially as the agency, there's somebody behind us too. We're thinking of our brands, we're thinking of our clients and their reaction as well to your work. So I think it could be really disorienting on those creative calls, whether it's more exploratory, or it's in preparation of a treatment, or it's even during bidding. So much is trying to happen, and I feel for the creatives on that side. But I think the best calls, you do a little bit of everything, and you make sure it's authentic to what you're trying to sell. I don't mean to make it entirely transactional, but like what type of artist you are, what type of work you have created, and what type of work you want to create in collaboration for the opportunity in front of you. Like, you have to marry all of those things and keep it authentic. But I do think there is an opportunity, and again, the best examples of this that I can think of is somebody that can kind of toe that line of all of those things, and I can walk away from the call and feel like I got to know that person a little bit. I've seen their work, or I can see their work, I can watch that video, but like, I know a little bit about who they are. I know a little bit about what they want to do. And hopefully that's enough to get excited. Or of course, sometimes it's okay to walk away from that meeting and, well, I didn't get an entire sense of that person and their artistic approach to something. And that's why we have, a director's statement or something. So I think also, like, giving feedback and communicating back, like, we enjoyed this piece of the call, but we didn't feel like we heard enough about X, is like, you have to share that.
And when you were talking about just, the excitement of the artist, and I was seeing that the creative call was the kind of next section that I wanted to talk to you about, I thought, wow, like, there really isn't a lot of room for excitement in that call sometimes. I mean, you're excited about the project, right? You're excited about being considered. And oftentimes it's the agency that's kind of giving you a tour through the deck and what the project is. So you're kind of taking everything in. And it really isn't until the treatment, or hopefully when you get to present the treatment, that you can really show the excitement, because now you understand it, you've absorbed it, but I'm going to take away from this call this idea that, like, if there's a way to, share your excitement for your own work on a creative call, I think that would be really great. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who do it. I'm just saying, having sat on so many of them, sometimes there's just no time. Like, you're in listening mode, and you're not invited in sometimes at that moment to share your own work, because there's just not enough time. You guys are doing 3 and 4 of those creative calls, and you've got 45 minutes, and half that time, most of that time's taken up going through the specs and the deck. So I think there needs to be more space allowed for that to be shared.
I agree. And I think anyone in that conversation, but maybe like the person most positioned to do it is the producer, like, invite that.
Yeah.
What,
for that in the call,
Yeah. Carve it out. And you want everybody to walk away from the call feeling like they were understood, or they understand. But then take it a little step further, and like, and what does this mean to you? Or like, how are you feeling about it? I think we don't ask that enough. Like, how do you feel? Yeah.
I've presented all of this to you. What about your work excites you to work on this project?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's just all it takes is one question. And I think an artist would just like beam at the chance to answer that question.
Yeah, I think we have to ask that. We have to give that opportunity, or else it's just going to be transactional business.
Yeah.
Do you want this more than the other person or not? Like,
exactly.
And that's no fun.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about treatments for a minute. I mean, we all know they take a ton of work and a ton of time and a lot of money sometimes, especially, when you're factoring in the amount of time that gets put on it. But some people do actually spend money on them. Tell me a little bit about how they're valued on your end and how they're used by your team.
Yeah, I think you were saying this a little bit earlier, but it's the ultimate opportunity for an artist to respond to the brief, to respond to the idea, put their own stamp on it, show a little bit about themselves. show what they aim to do. Proof of concept is great, but I'm also always open, and the creative teams I work with are open to like, I don't have that thing yet, and I don't have that specific thing that I want to do to show you, but I'm going to describe it, or we're going to talk about it. I'm going to present to you, or I'm going to use reference to describe or showcase what I want to do. And it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but my creatives use the treatment to really like receive that message in one consolidated, concise, maybe place. Yeah. And I think it is essential to decision making and to like almost like looking ahead. You know, we're very planful in this industry. So it's like, this is one project among 10, 20 that you'll have this year. So if you think about who you want to work with and what ideas you want to be immersed in over the next month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 months, whatever it is, the treatment is like this path, this branching pathway of like, do I want to live in this world for a while or this world with these people? And I think that's what is gathered at that stage in the process and excitement excites my creative teams.
What about sharing it with the client? Do you share the entire treatment with the client? Do you just share portions of it?
More often than not, it's sections. And I think it's like, it's distilling some of the information. So we give something even more concise to our clients and to our brands. But I think it's also about like what's different, maybe across the 2 or the 3, if you're competitively bidding, and like what's distinct, because this may just be my experience and in the healthcare world, but like sometimes there just isn't unique or substantial differences. You can only elevate the idea so much or in certain ways. So we also give feedback on treatments where if there hasn't been something that really differentiates a creative or an artist or a production company, like we're missing that and we need that, and let's work on that together. So we most often focus in our client presentations on like what makes A different than B, different than C, and the success of that, the opportunity of that is then the discussion point. And it doesn't just have to be one thing, of course, it could be very many things.
We're almost kind of wrapping up, and there's a few last little points I want to touch on. And one is kind of talking a little bit about budgets and estimates. I think more and more we're given budgets, which are so appreciated. You know, sometimes we aren't, sometimes we're asked to ballpark, sometimes, you know, there's a lot of work put into something because an agency is trying to get a client to commit to a job, and they don't have a budget yet. But for the most part, do you feel like you get budgets?
Happy to report, I guess, that I do. Yeah, I do. I do feel like there's transparency in what our ideal budget is. Oftentimes I'm saying like budget ceiling. Like what room are we in? How high, not how high can we go, but like where is that ceiling? And let's make sure we're aligned with our clients on it being the right, the right amount for what we're discussing. And then you don't have to build a budget all the way up to that ceiling. You could build it halfway to the room. It could sit more on the floor. So if I'm losing myself in my analogy, I think that's more of what I think about is like, what is that budget ceiling? Like walking away from this job, again, 6 months from now, 10 months from now, what's the most realistically you want to spend? And then I can do that work. The agency can do that work. Production companies can do that work to say, here's how we can bring that vision to life and keep it in that room or keep it under that ceiling.
Yeah, it's so much easier, obviously, to estimate with a budget in mind, especially because I feel like all the rates are just increasing and increasing right now. So having some guardrails is really important. And I feel like no job really has enough money. So we want to produce, as does anyone, it's not unique to me, but we want to produce the best possible job we can for the amount of money that you have. And I think there's so much work put into a bid that when we don't know the budget, especially if it's known and it's being held back from us, I think we are at a disadvantage. Or I think the whole project is at a disadvantage because we may be overshooting, or we may be thinking, oh God, I guess maybe they don't have enough money, and we're holding back. So I don't know. I think it has to do with, trust, relationships, and time in the industry and all of that. I tend to get the budgets mostly from the people I know, and I know a lot of people. And newer clients sometimes, either don't know or don't want to share. So
I don't see reasoning behind withholding your budget. People are going to, spin their wheels.
right.
And not to the benefit of anybody, really. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not to make light of, it sounds like this has been something you've seen before and not to make light of it, but I think that's problematic. Why are we not sharing our budgets?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other challenge too sometimes is when we want to be collaborative and helpful to help set budgets for clients, right? If you guys are in the scoping phase and you're trying to figure stuff out and what things cost, I don't mind kind of chiming in, but I also know that you are very capable of kind of scoping a job out and figuring out what it would cost without asking me to give you the minutia of, please call this stylist and find much that's a little time. So I think I've been seeing a lot of people asking for, and I'm using air quotes here, ballparks. And, what I want to give them is, sure, that's going to cost you between, 200 and 225. And what they want is a bid that goes, 225. And I'm like, okay, that takes a lot of time. That's not just me like putting numbers down. Like if you really want me to call and get you an accurate bid, that's very different. So I do try and we're trying to be better about everybody's use of time and making sure people are calling things what they are really what they really need. So,
yeah, I mean, it kind of applies to a lot of things. It's like you have to describe what you need and what you have and what you want. You can't make this a guessing game where the spin wheels. You'll actually waste the budget by doing that.
And I know it sounds obvious, like you and I are talking about it. Like, wait, why would anybody do this? But where it's not obvious at all. There's,
I'm sure,
emails come in, and the disorganization. I mean, I feel like that's a whole nother podcast, and that we can't go off on that tangent. But there are people like you and certain agencies that when I get a request for a job, the spec sheets are like pristine and perfect, and every question is answered, and usage and budget, and like everything is spelled out in deliverables, and I have no questions. Like, okay, thank you. And there are other people that are just, I'm like, have to ask a million questions, and then they get annoyed, and you're just like, okay, you're not doing your job. Like, I literally just put together a spec sheet for you.
Yeah, assumptions will be everyone's downfall, or assumptions only last and are helpful for so long. At the bidding stage, when you're really trying to award something, you got to know that number and you got to know the details and you have to describe it. And if there's something missing, you have to put information where there is none and have somebody react to it. So, yeah, I'm sure I'm maybe making too much of light of it, but I'm sorry to hear that seems like some people are struggling with communicating their budgets or understanding their budgets, and I'm sure it sounds easier. Yeah,
you're definitely not making
up that team.
I appreciate your incredulousness. Like, wait, what? Of course we're going to do this, which is like the way it should be. But for other people who are like listening out there, they're I'm sure they've experienced what I've experienced, which is like, not everyone is organized and cares the wrong word, but just maybe they don't have the resources or the mentors or, there's so many reasons why, they might be really busy and they don't have time to deal and whatever, and they just need help and they're going to the resource that they can trust. So, but I just kind of want to, appreciate what the work that you put in and how it makes the work that I give you better.
Yeah, it's got to come from both sides.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so just one last question before we wrap up. Are there any common mistakes or pitfalls that artists tend to make when they're trying to land a job?
Common mistakes. I don't know that it's necessarily a mistake, but maybe assumptions is top of mind from the topic we just discussed. And I'm kind of sad to share this a little bit, but I think sometimes potential partners and vendors don't know, and how could they know how little time we may have to advocate for them on a job, or to draw client focus to, this is the job that we have in front of us. Here are the options in that bidding stage. So I think sometimes I hear, and it's all positive things, I hear from partners in the bidding process, requesting status updates, because of course we have to keep in touch about what's going on in terms of bidding. But we might have 15 minutes with our clients on a daily basis or on a weekly basis even, and we're trying to cover a lot of different things. And of course, it's the agency's job to make sure they're communicating that limited availability or time, and be transparent with our partners. But I think sometimes there's an assumption that this is the highest priority for our clients. Even if it's the agency's highest priority, it doesn't mean that it's our client's highest priority. And as marketers, as advertisers, they have a lot to manage. So I think, kind of trying to put each other in each other's shoes in a way is something that can be helpful. I don't think it's a big mistake that I'm seeing a lot, but I just think that helps, of just like, maybe it's a little bit of what we said earlier too. It's like asking those questions can be really helpful. How will these treatments be presented? What is this the highest priority for the clients? Where does it fall in priority order for the campaign? Getting on the same page about that can be really helpful during bidding, during award, and during a project, because sometimes it's a lot less than I think people expect. And knowing that up front, or knowing that at any time in a project, can be helpful.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Just trying to get out of your own head, right? And remember, you're kind of in a vacuum sometimes, and there's so much more going on than we ever know or can understand, or will even sometimes be shared with us. So I do think
are you receiving feedback? Do you feel like you get
sometimes
feedback on the experience from the agency?
That's a great question. And I would say 25% of the time do we get really amazing feedback, like really helpful. And it doesn't have to be constructive criticism, just like really like helpful, like what happened in that room and why we didn't get the job. I would say 75% of the time, it's so sorry, we went in another direction. Thank you. We'll get you back next time, which is, you might as well not even email me. Like, that gives me literally nothing. And while I know sometimes there isn't a reason, except the client just chose one, like that could literally be the reason, right? They have 3 strong choices and 3 great bids, and we were in a good spot. And, the client chose this, and the agency decided not to, push for something else because they liked all 3 choices. That is a legit reason, but I think sometimes people don't want to have the hard conversation or I always say, just give me one more sentence. That's all I need. Like, the amount of time and effort that everyone put into this to receive something just that is like, hey, sorry, we went another direction, is a bit of a like, wah, wah, like, oh my God, really? Like, what happened? And just like, please just share what happened in the meeting. And I might not be able to do anything better or different, or, there might not be something for me to learn, but if I can just have some context into the conversations, I would feel, and my team would feel, appreciated and valued in that moment.
Of course. I mean, it's like a balloon deflating or even popping with all the build up to that, all the work like you're describing that's going into these treatments, even the simplest treatment, and the expectations and the hope, it can only be managed so much to get an email back. Thank you so much. We're going in another direction. That really is like popping a balloon and walking away.
Yeah. And a lot of times it comes because I've emailed saying, hey, what's going on with the project? So, and again, someone like you, that I don't expect that from you at all. Your agency, your protocols, the way your network works, like all of it is, very respectful. But there are a lot of jobs out there that end that way. So hopefully people who listen will get will hear me saying, just give me one more sentence, and they'll start giving one more sentence to people out there.
I'm going to take that away. I really like that. I think there could be a lot of pressure. I've sent paragraphs to partners. It's probably too much. I'm probably doing too much.
No, there's never too much.
I like this one more sentence idea though. I'm gonna take that away.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so then I always ask the same 2 questions, and I haven't changed them up after 100 and something episodes. I'd like to know what your favorite thing to do on a Sunday is, and if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
My favorite thing to do on a Sunday is cook a meal. I was going to say cook a big meal, but I don't think it necessarily has to be a large meal. But I really I like doing it all on a Sunday. So I like choosing what I'm going to cook, doing the shopping, and actually cooking the thing as like a nice way to wind down the weekend. And it's probably the Italian in me that likes to do that. But it's not just pasta; it could be anything. So I like that. It's almost like an arts and crafts project for the end of the week. That's my Sunday routine. And what would I do if I wasn't a producer? I think I guess I received this question similar to like, what would you do if you didn't, need to earn money, or you didn't need to have a job? And I think I would just read. And read. So I think something like a librarian or a bookstore manager, something like that. I think owning a used bookstore would be fantastic, and I could populate it with my favorite books, and have different reading groups and bring people together for conversation on text. And
That's awesome.
that would be.
That question isn't totally fair because it's not qualified with if you had all the money in the world and you didn't have to work, what would you do?
Yeah, right. Or in my answer, it's like if libraries were still valued as a place,
yeah, exactly.
And yeah, in my fantasy world, print would still be a major form of media that's valued, and I'd have a bookstore.
Reading is the best. I love it. Finding my own little special place in the house and curling up and reading is like my favorite.
A reading nook is such a special thing.
If you know, you know. And you curl up in there with a blanket and maybe even a dog, and you're just like, oh my God, okay, I'm perfect. No, that's awesome. Well, John, it was lovely to have you as a guest. I really, really appreciate your time and your insights and all of your experiences and, just your willingness to share them with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so appreciative of being given the opportunity to speak to you. And these were great questions. I look forward to speaking again.
Awesome. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.